When a man greets you in a way that feels different, more present, more intentional, more grounded, it's rarely accidental. One of the biggest myths in modern dating is that attraction always announces itself loudly. In reality, the deepest attraction often reveals itself quietly through behaviors a man doesn't consciously control. A greeting is one of those moments. It's a psychological reflex. Before he has time to perform, impress, or protect his ego, his body tells the truth. When you're deep in a man's mind, his greeting slows down. Not in an awkward way, but in a deliberate one. He doesn't rush past the moment. His attention lands on you fully. His eyes settle, not darting. His posture opens rather than tightens. This happens because attention follows emotional investment. Where the mind goes, the body follows. If you occupy meaningful mental space for him, his nervous system registers you as significant, not casual. What's important here is understanding why this matters psychologically. The human brain categorizes people quickly. Most interactions are filed under background. We greet out of habit, autopilot, social conditioning. But when someone carries emotional weight, the brain shifts gears. Dopamine and oxytocin subtly influence behavior, pulling focus into the present moment. That's why his greeting feels warmer, more anchored, almost as if time compresses slightly when he sees you. This is also where many people misinterpret confidence. A man who is deeply invested doesn't always come across as flashy or overly charming in his greeting. In fact, the opposite is often true. His greeting may feel calm, steady, even slightly restrained. That restraint isn't disinterest, it's regulation. When someone matters, we instinctively want to get it right. We become more conscious, more careful, more sincere. His body language reflects that internal calibration. Another subtle cue is consistency. When a man is thinking about you, his greeting doesn't fluctuate wildly based on mood or context. Whether he's tired, stressed, or distracted, there's a baseline warmth that remains. That's because emotional investment creates continuity. You're not an event in his day, you're a constant. And consistency is one of the most reliable indicators of genuine interest, far more than grand gestures or dramatic declarations. This is where power quietly shifts back to you. When you learn to read these moments, you stop chasing signs that can be faked, texts, compliments, promises, and start observing behaviors that are difficult to manufacture. A greeting happens too fast for strategy. It's instinctive, and instincts are shaped by what occupies the heart and mind most deeply. The deeper lesson here isn't just about decoding him. It's about trusting what you observe rather than what you hope. When you notice a greeting that feels grounded, attentive, and emotionally present, allow yourself to receive it without overanalyzing or doubting it. At the same time, if that presence is missing, don't fill in the gaps with excuses. Absence of depth is information, not a challenge to overcome. Ultimately, attraction that is real doesn't try to convince you. It reveals itself. And often, it reveals itself in the smallest moment, before a single word is spoken. Pay attention to how he enters your space. It may tell you everything you need to know. When a man is deeply attracted, especially one with narcissistic traits, his greeting shifts from something performative to something instinctive. This is where you begin to see the difference between a greeting that's meant to impress and one that's meant to connect. Narcissists are often highly controlled in how they present themselves. They curate impressions. They manage reactions. But attraction has a way of loosening that control. When you are genuinely on his mind, his greeting stops being a strategy and starts becoming a reflex. You'll notice this in the way his body moves before his words catch up. He may step closer without realizing it, lean in slightly, or orient his torso toward you even in a crowded room. This isn't accidental. Psychologically, the body moves toward what the mind is preoccupied with. A narcissistic man who usually guards his autonomy fiercely doesn't surrender physical space easily. When he does, it's because you've become a mental reference point. You matter enough to disrupt his usual self-focus. What's important here is that this kind of greeting isn't loud or exaggerated. In fact, it's often quieter. His voice may drop slightly, his movements slow. There's a grounded quality to his presence, as though he's momentarily less concerned with being admired and more concerned with being seen by you. This is significant because narcissists typically thrive on external validation. When attraction deepens, their attention narrows. You're no longer just another mirror reflecting admiration back at him. You become someone whose response actually matters. There's also a subtle emotional leak in these moments. He may hold eye contact just a second longer than necessary or hesitate before breaking away. That hesitation is key. It signals internal conflict. On one hand, he wants to maintain control and emotional distance. On the other, his attraction pulls him closer. Greetings happen fast, which makes them revealing. There's no time to construct a persona. What comes out is what's already inside. From a psychological standpoint, this is about cognitive load. When someone occupies a significant space in your mind, your brain is already engaged with them before interaction begins. That's why his greeting feels different. He's already with you before you speak. His attention arrives ahead of his words. For narcissistic personalities, this is rare. Their default mode is self-referential. When that shifts, even briefly, it tells you something real is happening beneath the surface. But here's the crucial insight. This kind of greeting doesn't mean he's suddenly emotionally healthy or ready for commitment. It means you've crossed a threshold of significance. You've become someone who bypasses his defenses, even if only momentarily. The danger is mistaking this for consistency. Attraction creates cracks, not transformations. The power lies in noticing the crack without trying to force it wider. The most grounded response you can have is calm awareness. You don't rush toward him emotionally just because he leaned in physically. You observe, you stay centered. When you do that, you maintain your own authority, which is the one thing a narcissist truly responds to over time. So let this be your reflection point. Attraction reveals itself in moments of unconscious closeness, but your strength is revealed in how you respond. Notice the shift, respect its meaning, and choose not to chase what is already moving toward you. When a man greets you in a way that feels unusually intentional, slower, warmer, more present, that's not accidental. Especially with narcissistic personalities, greetings are rarely neutral. They are strategic, even when they appear effortless. A narcissist doesn't give emotional energy freely. So when his greeting carries weight, eye contact that lingers a second too long, a tone that softens, a pause that feels deliberate, it's a signal that you're occupying mental space long before that moment ever arrived. Here's why this matters. Narcissists are deeply image-conscious and self-directed. Their attention is fragmented, constantly scanning for validation, control, and advantage. For most people, they operate on autopilot. Quick hellos, distracted body language, performative charm. But when you're deep in his mind, that autopilot switches off. The greeting becomes focused. You'll notice his body orient toward you fully. His voice may lower, not louder, because attention has replaced performance. This isn't about flirting, it's about investment. His nervous system is engaged. Psychologically, this happens because anticipation has already occurred. He has imagined the interaction before it happens. That preoccupation changes behavior. He's no longer reacting to you in real time. He's responding to a version of you he's been mentally rehearsing. That's why the greeting can feel charged even if the words are simple. The emotional content isn't in what he says, it's in the restraint, the control, the subtle calibration of his presence. What's crucial to understand is that narcissists struggle to hide this phase. They can mask disinterest with charm, but they can't fully mask fixation. When you're in their head, their greeting becomes a checkpoint. They're assessing your availability, your emotional temperature, your responsiveness, all in seconds. That's why you may feel seen in that moment in a way that feels almost disproportionate to the interaction itself. He's not just greeting you, he's checking whether the story he's been running internally still holds power. Philosophically, this is where desire reveals itself, not through intensity, but through attention. Attention is costly for a narcissist. It requires him to step outside self-absorption, even briefly. So when he gives you undivided presence at the very first moment of contact, that's the clearest evidence that you matter to him in a way that disrupts his usual pattern. This is not affection yet, and it's important not to romanticize it prematurely, but it is significance. The mistake many people make is focusing on the warmth of the greeting rather than its consistency. One powerful greeting doesn't mean commitment, but repeated moments of grounded, intentional presence at the point of greeting tell a story. They show that you're not an afterthought, you're a reference point. And for a narcissist, that's rare. So the real question isn't, does he greet me like this? It's, does he consistently show up mentally before he shows up physically? Because when someone is deep in your mind, their body can't help but follow. And here's the reflection to sit with. Never chase the intensity of a greeting. Watch for the discipline of attention. That's where real power and real clarity lives. When a man truly carries someone in his mind, his greeting becomes a reflection of that internal focus. This is subtle, often overlooked, yet profoundly revealing. It's not about a rehearsed line or an over-the-top gesture. It's about presence. When he sees you, the way he acknowledges you communicates that you occupy space in his thoughts long before he even speaks. His body orients toward you almost unconsciously. A small step forward, a brief pause, a tilt of the head. These micro movements signal that he's mentally and emotionally engaged. Psychologically, this is fascinating because it operates beneath conscious control. Our brains are wired to respond to what captures our attention. When someone matters, our body language, facial expressions, and even the timing of our words subtly adjust to align with that interest. He may momentarily hesitate before greeting you, not out of awkwardness, but because his mind is fully present with the idea of you. His attention is not scattered, it's intentionally narrow, a clear indicator of emotional significance. From a philosophical perspective, this speaks to the nature of recognition. To truly see someone is to acknowledge their existence in a way that transcends casual social interaction. When a man greets you with the weight of thought behind it, he is expressing a recognition of your importance. This is why such greetings feel different. They carry a gravity that ordinary social exchanges lack. It's as if he is silently communicating, you matter. I notice you in a way that goes beyond surface-level interaction. The subtlety of this greeting is precisely what makes it powerful. It is rarely loud or exaggerated. It is concentrated and intentional. The nuance is in the details. The softness of his smile, the steadiness of his eyes, the deliberate timing of his words. These elements combined create a moment that feels intimate even in public spaces. A brief acknowledgement that you are present not just physically, but mentally and emotionally in his world. It's a profound signal that he has carried you into his mental landscape, and that thoughtfulness is reflected in the authenticity of the greeting. Many people overlook these indicators because they are looking for obvious demonstrations, grand gestures, dramatic compliments, or overt flirtation. But true attraction is rarely performative. It reveals itself in consistent, subtle ways. The greeting, when observed closely, becomes a mirror reflecting the depth of his engagement. It is reliable because it originates from an internal state, not an external strategy. Understanding this changes how you perceive interactions. You learn to distinguish between superficial acknowledgement and meaningful attention. You recognize the signs of genuine interest, allowing you to respond with clarity rather than uncertainty. It gives you insight into not just what he says, but the underlying emotional investment behind his actions. Ultimately, when a man greets you in this manner, it is a silent declaration of his focus and thoughtfulness. An invitation to notice the depth of his presence and an opportunity to respond to authenticity with awareness. Recognizing this subtle greeting is about tuning in to the quiet language of attention, a language that speaks louder than words and guides you toward relationships rooted in genuine emotional engagement. Once a man carries you deeply in his thoughts, his greeting becomes more than a mere formality. It carries intention, a subtle declaration that your presence affects him emotionally. What makes this remarkable is that it often happens below the level of conscious control. He may not realize the small ways he signals his engagement, a slightly longer pause before speaking, a softening of his tone, or a momentary shift in posture that leans ever so slightly toward you. These micro behaviors are not rehearsed, they are instinctive reflections of his inner focus. Psychologically, this is tied to the human need for connection and the way our brains encode emotional significance. When someone occupies our thoughts, the mind naturally prioritizes interactions with them. A man's greeting, in this context, is a manifestation of that prioritization. He is alert, yet not anxious, present, yet composed. Every movement communicates an unspoken awareness that he has considered you even when you were not in sight. It is a quiet, almost imperceptible acknowledgement that you exist in his mental landscape and that he values your presence within it. There is a philosophical depth here as well. To greet someone with genuine emotional investment is to honor the significance of the moment. It is a recognition that interactions are not merely transactional, but relational. When a man greets you like this, he signals an understanding that the connection is meaningful and that his attention is not divided. This contrasts sharply with casual greetings, which are reflexive and superficial here. The greeting is deliberate, weighted with the subtle energy of consideration. What is striking is how the body communicates these signals even when the mind attempts to regulate them. A softening of facial expressions, a controlled but noticeable eye contact, or a subtle shift closer to you. All of these are involuntary expressions of attention. They reveal a depth that words alone cannot convey. In many cases, the intensity of these subtle signs surpasses verbal communication. They speak to the unconscious way the brain prioritizes emotional connections. Understanding this dynamic allows you to interpret greetings with nuance. You begin to notice the difference between mechanical politeness and authentic engagement. It is in these details, the tilt of a head, the careful timing of a hello, the gentle steadiness in tone, that true attraction and emotional investment reveal themselves. Recognizing these signals provides clarity and empowers you to respond consciously rather than reactively in the interaction. Ultimately, when a man greets you in this manner, it is a silent confirmation of your importance in his inner world. It is not performative. It is natural. It reflects thoughtfulness, presence, and a willingness to invest emotionally, even before any words are spoken. By attuning yourself to these subtle yet profound signs, you can navigate interactions with greater awareness, understanding when attention is genuine and when it is superficial. The beauty of this recognition lies in its simplicity. True connection often whispers rather than shouts. And when you learn to listen to those whispers, you gain insight into who is genuinely present for you and who is not. When a man carries you deeply in his mind, his greeting becomes the final reflection of that internal engagement, a culmination of thought, attention, and subtle emotion. By the time he speaks or approaches, there is a presence in the way he moves, a rhythm to his gesture, and a resonance in his tone that communicates far more than words ever could. This is the moment where authenticity meets instinct, where his inner valuation of you is projected outwardly, consciously or not. It is the essence of emotional investment distilled into a single, simple interaction. Psychologically, this phenomenon is rooted in the interplay between attention and emotion. Human beings are wired to respond to what we prioritize mentally and emotionally. When someone occupies a significant space in our minds, the neural pathways associated with them activate in subtle but measurable ways. This manifests physically: the softening of facial expressions, the slight elongation of eye contact, a controlled yet gentle movement toward you. Each micro-behavior is a signal of focus, an outward echo of an inward state that is difficult to manipulate artificially. Even in situations where he wants to appear casual, these markers often betray the depth of his attention. Philosophically, this greeting represents more than attraction; it embodies recognition. To truly acknowledge someone in such a way is to grant them a presence within your world, an affirmation that they matter enough to occupy your attention in this very moment. It contrasts sharply with superficial social exchanges, which are performed out of habit, obligation, or etiquette. Here, the greeting carries a weight of intention. It is an implicit communication that says, "You are significant to me, and my awareness of you is deliberate." What makes this particularly revealing is the balance of restraint and presence. He does not overcompensate with exaggerated gestures or excessive words. Instead, the strength of the greeting lies in its subtlety, in the ability to convey investment without needing validation. This is the hallmark of genuine connection. It does not perform for others, it simply is. Observing such a greeting allows you to differentiate between performative charm and authentic emotional engagement. It teaches you to read the unspoken language of attention, to recognize that true interest often speaks quietly but powerfully. Recognizing this level of investment also offers insight into relational dynamics. It signals that the person has thought about you beyond immediate interaction, that you occupy a mental space where he imagines, considers, and integrates you into his worldview. This transforms the greeting from a simple social act into a signal of ongoing attention, revealing layers of desire, curiosity, and emotional prioritization. Understanding this allows you to approach interactions with clarity, appreciating the presence of someone who is genuinely attuned to you rather than responding to empty social cues. Ultimately, when a man greets you with the resonance of deep thought and emotional attention, it is a rare and valuable signal. It reflects a convergence of mind and heart, a natural projection of investment that cannot easily be feigned. By attuning yourself to these subtle but profound cues, you learn to recognize authentic engagement in real time. And in that recognition lies power, the ability to respond, to appreciate, and to navigate relationships with wisdom and discernment. True attention is a quiet force, and when you see it reflected in a greeting, you are witnessing the genuine architecture of connection.